Hi, everybody.
Hello.
How we all doing today?
Ah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the mood today, huh?
It's not great.
It's no,
No.
it's not.
Well, that does mean that we have a few causes that we want to talk about today before
I
we get started.
1,000%, absolutely.
And I know that I'm sure a lot of you are feeling angry. Um,
Yep. If you're so angry you can't sleep, then you're in the right place. That's about all I can say.
so glad to have you with us today.
Hmm.
And we will do some fun stuff. And but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to push through.
It is. But I think one of the reasons that we really wanted to make sure that we soldiered on today in spite of this is because, for my money, one of the most important things that we do is bring to light causes that are really important. So we've got a double feature on that front today.
Mm-hmm.
Two causes we'd like you to consider.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you've gotten anything out of these streams, if they've helped you at all, either with writing or just getting through, we really, really ask that you support these causes.
Yeah,
That's how you can show us.
that's what you can do for us.
Yes, 100%. So you want to talk about this?
Yes. Well, I know you had one.
I did. So both of the links that we're going to describe are in the episode description, so you can go find those. Um, uh, one of them that we have is the Brooklyn Bail Fund, which we would really ask you to consider. The bail fund in Minneapolis has been going around quite a lot lately, but as I understand, they're starting that organization is starting to ask us to reach out to more local organizations.
Right,
Right.
because they've just been overwhelmed with support, which is amazing.
Yeah. And we're in Boston, not in Brooklyn, but a lot of stuff has just gone down in New York City, as you probably know. And
Yep.
there are a lot of people who are out there on the front lines doing the right thing, who really, really need our support. So if you can help those people out, again, we're still in the pandemic, and so being, incarcerated before bail is still an extremely dangerous sentence. So this is a case where your what you give can lead to like immediate help for people who really earned it, really, really earned our help. I think. Yeah. So.
So that's one cause you can support. Another one that we've also put the link to is there is a local business called Sparkletown Studios, and they have created a line of "Fuck White Supremacy" T-shirts, and all the proceeds from that, 100% of the profits are going to Campaign Zero, which is for ending police violence in the U.S. I'll just read you what it says on their website. We can live in a world where the police don't kill people by limiting police interventions, improving community interactions, and ensuring accountability. They have several specific policy solutions, including end broken windows policing, community oversight, limiting use of force, independently investigating and prosecuting, community representation, body cams / filming the police, training, ending for-profit policing, demilitarization, and fair police union contracts. So if you purchase a Fuck White Supremacy t-shirt from Sparkletown Studios, which is a queer woman-owned local business, it is not black-owned, so only these specific shirts are going to be, the profits are going to be going to a cause that's kind of relevant today. So just something to know. Definitely check out their other stuff if you want to, but it's not as relevant to what we're talking about today.
And of course, you can donate directly to
You
the
can
cause.
also just donate directly to Campaign Zero. That would be great too.
I believe the shirt is sparkly. So
I don't know if the shirt is sparkly. It's very cool.
I saw some reviews that said that it's sparkly.
Don't take our word on that, but it looks very cool. And it's a cool way to donate to Campaign Zero as well. If you want to just donate directly to that cause, that's great too.
Right.
So those links are in the description below.
Thanks, everybody. I think this week especially.
Yeah.
This would be huge. We also want to call out on our Twitter. Sarah, who's been adding a lot of stuff to our Twitter about this, has put some tips for protesting safely, for taking care of yourself when you're protesting.
So you can check those out and retweet.
Yes. I think one of the things that I've really been thinking about during this is, using social media to tweet out what you believe in this context, especially if your followers probably all believe the same thing, not necessarily really useful. But tweeting out information that people might not know that will really help them pursue this, if you can do nothing else, that is hugely helpful because you're helping people who are right out there. So thank you.
And I think just having concrete information to pass along is a really good thing, and also relevant to our workshop today.
Yes, very relevant. We're going to talk about concrete information, concrete language. We're going to do that in a minute.
So I think that's our causes for today. And I know that people hang out in the Discord, not just during the workshop, and I hope that you find it helpful as a place to talk to each other about stuff that's going on. If you're having a hard time, which you probably are, because I think everybody is.
Yes.
So let's set that aside for a moment. And get to our submissions.
Yeah, let's celebrate you all.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So today, or this week, we each chose a submission. Remember, the submission prompt this week was show us a first draft segment and then show us how you revised it, right? Do you want to go first?
Sure. So the submission that I chose, we actually have already read a little bit of this person's work before, and so we thought it would be kind of cool to take a look back at that and see how they've moved from their first draft to a later draft. So this is by Ceci. It's Outlaw Ada. Was it Ada or Ada? Now I don't remember.
I don't know. Whenever I've seen that name spelled, it's been Ada. But I don't know.
For me, it's been Ada. So, anyway, so if you've been in the previous workshops, you'll have seen that we read a little bit of this person's work before. So we'll take a look at a chunk of their first draft versus some of their revised draft, which I think is pretty cool. So here's a chunk of their first draft. When Alice Obano packed up her old life in a single snakeskin sack, she took with her 5 things: her other dress, a tin cup, her best ink and needles, a silk nightcap, and her only surviving photograph. She left her bedroom with the door unlocked and her heart pounding, not looking back once as she slipped out of the creaky boarding house. Ada had parked the wagon a few blocks south, giving the yak a feeding before they departed to wherever they were headed. If you skip out on Grumpus's rest, she gets real pissy, she had said. She stopped clear in the middle of the trail once. She's the surliest damn yak I've ever met. She don't get along with nobody. Ada left Alice to grab what she needed from the house and to say her farewells. She hadn't bothered to tell her that there was nobody alive worth saying bye to. So she found herself wandering the moonlit streets of the town that became her prison, thinking about the day that had led her here, about to fly the coop. Already strong.
Already good.
Already really strong for a first draft, but here is the revision. When Alice Obano packed up her life in an old snakeskin sack, she took with her 6 items: her yellow dress, her tattoo kit, a silk nightcap, her only surviving photograph, a rope the length of her arm, and a lard candle in a rusty tin. She slung the bag over her shoulder and crept out the door, heart pounding as she left the creaky boarding house and the chains shackling her to it in the dust. Ada had left Alice with instructions to grab what she needed from the house and to say her farewells, but with nobody alive worth saying bye to, she had some spare time. Ada had parked the wagon a few blocks south to give the yak a feeding before they left to go. Well, neither of them knew yet. If you skip out on Grumpus's rest, she gets real pissy, she'd said. She's the surliest damn yak I've ever met. The only person she put up with was my old man. If you're smart, you'll stay away from her back end. So until Ada could take Alice to her final place of business, she found herself wandering the moonlit streets she'd spent 8 years calling her prison, thinking about the day that had led her here, about to fly the coop.
Very good.
It's so good.
The specifics really elevated.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, similarly to what we said when we gave Casey feedback before, I mean, it's so efficient. And the thing is, even the first draft was really efficient.
Right.
And then I don't think really I mean, maybe one sentence of length is added here, but like barely any length is added, but the details just keep coming and coming.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, it's just so efficient. So we went from already very efficient to just unbelievably efficient. And I really like the specific details that were changed and added. We went from 5 things to 6 things, but we got a lot more specific about them. It wasn't her other dress, it was her yellow dress. And we got the lard candle in a rusty tin. That's very evocative, very specific. We changed the little bit of dialogue about the yak. I don't know why I'm saying we. I had nothing to do with this. Casey changed the dialogue, not really adding any length, but we're getting a lot more development here because she don't get along with nobody became the only person she put up with was my old man. So we introduce a relationship that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. It tells us something about the character. It gets a little bit funnier. If you're smart, you'll stay away from her back end. That's very cute. And we also get the specificity of that she'd spent 8 years calling this town her prison. It's so good. Went from good to even better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Really great changes. I love the specificity, the world building, the character and relationship building. I think all of that gets stronger.
There's a huge density of information in that final draft without it being hard to read. It's still incredibly easy to read.
Yes.
Which is really, really impressive.
Yes.
So you said it was Casey?
Yes. Great job.
Nice work, Casey.
Good job.
The example that I wanted to pull out, which I'm very professionally going to read off my phone, is how the universe works. The document says it's by Amira. I don't recall what the username was. Do you have that over there?
I will see if I can find it.
Okay. This one is. I don't think we have shared this person's work before.
I don't think so either.
But one of the things I'm not going to read this whole thing. There's a lot here, and you should definitely go read it on your own because both drafts rule. But there's something that Amira / we're going to find out who did.
Amir Cat Official is their handle.
Amir Cat Official. That I think is awesome, and I really want to call out. So the original draft. This is the beginning of chapter 1. It looks like. So the original draft starts. Nur sat at the bar, 2 magnetite pieces squeezed between their fingers, softly sliding them together, feeling a soft, invisible force gently guide them back together. They came from the pocket of an old coat Nur found in the dumpster out back, where they had just woken up with only one thought on their mind. My name is Nur. I am from Earth. As they stared into the pitch blackness outside of the window, the little pinpricks of light and the soft, glittering pastel band that took up much of the horizon, Nur had a feeling they weren't on Earth. Yeah, that'll be 10 mags. Huh? Nur blinked their electric blue gaze up at a large, rapidly balding man donning a stained apron. His large, rotund fingers splayed out onto the counter between them, hands looking like menacing paws. That's where I'm going to stop with the first draft. Let's take a look at how the final draft starts, and it rules. It's so good. Too soon they'll be dressed out by greeting hands sifting through their viscera, but for now they're awake. The wind is rushing across the wheat fields and is cool against their skin. Their hands flex, their toes curled against soft, wet grass. It was summer and the night sky was the shade of blueberries. They looked up to the stars. They were so bright. Your name is Nur, a man whispered, laying a large, assuring hand upon their shoulder. My name is... The stars rushed away as a scream shot out of the dark. Too soon, they'll lay blank-gazed and slack-jawed in a dumpster among the stars, but for now, they were laid bare upon a cool metal table. The sky above was stark white with harsh corners, illuminated by a silver disk that gave off a blinding light. They couldn't flex their hands, for they were torn off and laid beside their face. Everything felt hot, burning hot, yet dull. There was a fuzziness to the corners of their vision. There was a man with hands inside them. He smelled too clean. He didn't know they were awake. I'm going to stop there. It really, really goes places from there. But like, if you want to talk about like a transformation of the hook, wow. This, I think, sets the mood, like huge transformation in setting the mood. You immediately get into tons of like concrete images that we can absolutely imagine. And the original was an engaging setup, and I think this one sort of sets up the engaging setup engagingly, and it's really great.
Right, because if I'm not wrong, the chapter 1 still exists in
Yes.
some form, but they've added this prologue
Yes.
on top of it.
Yeah, and even the chapter 1,
It's also super different.
It's from a different perspective.
Right.
It's so interesting. So this is a case where a lot of people have been asking us about like, how do you know you found the right perspective, that you're telling the story from the right point of view, and things like that. A Meerkat official did an amazing job, like figuring out through the drafting process what the perspective like could have been, right, in order to really grab the audience, and I think that that is awesome. So thank you very much.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah. I believe with that, we're ready to get into today's lesson, right? Let me pull that fool up. All right. Today, we're talking about something that people have been asking us about for a while, which is setting. And in order to do that, we're going to talk a lot about description, too, which people have also been asking us about. This is a silly way of phrasing it, but this is a question that I ask myself a lot when I'm describing a place, which is just like, you could describe a place forever, right? When do you stop? How much is enough? Etc., right? So we're going to talk today about what setting can do. So let's get into it. We're going to set up talking about setting by talking about something completely different, and eventually it will make sense, I swear. We're going to talk about concrete and abstract language, and this will make sense in a second. But these are two different kinds of language that really factor in when you're thinking about what it is you're writing, and concrete language is especially important when it comes to description. All right? So concrete language is any words that interact with the five senses. They are specific words, but they may not reach very far, and they're the building blocks of effective description. Abstractions are words that signal ideas, concepts, beliefs, and emotions. They talk about the important stuff, but they can be extremely vague. So to give you some examples, the words red, salty, bitter, and soft, those are all concrete, right? They directly interact with our senses. They allow us to see or feel or smell, etc., something, right? The words happiness, fear, war, money, time are all abstractions because you can't describe the concept itself using the five senses. I could take out a dollar bill and we could describe the dollar bill, but you cannot describe the concept of exchanging paper or coins for goods and services, right? It is amorphous. So another thing that I think is worth bringing up is that you need to make sure that your concrete words are specific in order for them to be concrete. So the words tasty, good, gross, and stinky aren't really concrete because there are a million roads there.
Right, they can mean different things
right.
to different people.
A good general test that I have found is, so a couple years ago, I have a, like, I guess you'd call him my nephew or my cousin. It's my cousin's son. That like whenever we were going to order dinner, he would always say, "I love pepperoni pizza," right? When he uses the word when he uses the word love there, it is very different from when my mother says to me, "I love you," right? I hope. And if it's not, this is something terrible has happened. But the thing is that these big abstractions are the important stuff, right? But because they're so important, they've been co-opted to mean a million different things.
I also think they're tempting. I mean, not that abstractions are inherently bad, because they absolutely have their place. But I also think they can sometimes be tempting to use when, in fact, concrete language would be more effective, because you already know what you mean, and you already know how you feel about the thing that you're writing about.
Yes.
So you kind of want to just put that straight down on the page, but you kind of need to translate it for your reader.
Right. Exactly. And you need, and this is the way that you translate perspective, right? So, right out the gate, we're doing an exercise. Are you ready?
Woo!
We're going to practice with the concrete language. Nope. We're going to practice with concrete language, not move forward. So here's the deal. I have this chart here. As a group, we're going to decide on an abstraction out of a couple that I've picked that we're going to write about. And then everybody's going to come up with images that associate with each one of these. So
everybody should get in the live channel?
Everybody should get in the live channel. Hop on in. And let me bring up.
Oh, we're doing straw poll.
We're doing straw poll.
We're bringing back the straw poll.
All right. So if you go over to the announcements channel on the Discord for abstraction, you'll find a link to this straw poll so that you can vote on what abstraction we as a group should write about. So head on over there, start voting for what you'd like to write about. The four that I picked were fear, time, love, and peace. I'll explain why when we get into a little bit more depth with what the exercise is, but these will all work really well for what we want to do. Let me take a look at those results, see how we're doing. Time's big.
I mean, there's 8 votes so far.
But time's big.
So time is a flat circle.
There's just so much of it. Oh, fear's catching up.
Let me tell you.
Peace not popular today. I wonder why that is.
Woo!
Gonna give this a couple minutes. We got 45 votes. We'll cut it off when we get to 55 or 60.
Okay. Except they've stopped.
All right, they've stopped. So I guess we're gonna do time because time does have a significant.
It has a big lead, yeah.
Cool. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna write about time. I want you to imagine that for the stream today, Sophie and I have brought in the physical embodiment of the abstract concept of time.
Okay, here it is.
Not a clock. A clock shows us time, but the physical embodiment of the idea of, things progressing second by second, right? Our question for you is, what does the physical embodiment of time look like? When it makes a noise, what does it sound like? If you reached out to touch it, what would it feel like? What does it smell like? And if you decided to lick it, what does it taste like? You may have noticed that I've ordered these senses in a completely bizarre order. This is not usually how you say them. I did that because sight and sound are the easy ones, smell and taste are the insane ones. So very interested to see what you all come out with in there. And the live channel, put down what sense you're talking about, and then give us an image, right? You can just compare it to something else with a noun. You can give us some descriptor words too. It could be an object that is doing something, right? You can give us a verb. That's totally fine.
Okay, we're getting some things, but a lot of them don't say which sense it is yet, probably because there's lag.
Yeah. Just make sure you label it with what sense you mean to do, and I'll start adding this.
Okay, so sight, a constantly growing and decaying flower. I'll give you some sight ones. Fall leaves turning. Rat with a disc for a tail.
Rat with a disc for a tail.
A phoenix. A crystal that is made of layers that have no end. Dust motes. Trees growing where you only saw saplings before.
All right. Trees. Can you see if you can find any for other senses?
Yep. Okay, let me look for sound.
I want y'all to challenge yourself to tell me what time tastes like.
Sound. We have tick-tock. We have the grinding of gears. We have layers and layers of talking. We have the sea. It goes bloop. Love that.
That's great. I think we can move on to another sense.
Okay, let's do touch. A river. Feels like a river. Viscous. Wrinkled and decaying skin. Weathered cloth or worn material.
Can I take one more? Or we can go on to smell.
Okay, let's do smell. The sweet smell of decaying books. Water. Decaying rat in the wall of your house. We're really about rats. Molded food and dust.
We can keep doing smaller. We can move on to taste.
Okay. Curry. Whoa. Why has more than one person said curry?
That's very interesting.
Also, I do remember when we did this exercise in our creative writing class when we were in college.
Yeah.
I definitely talked about curry. Like, not for time.
Yeah.
But for one of the things, I talked about curry.
Very.
Is this a cultural thing?
I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, like, part of the reason that I really push people to do smell and taste here is because, I mean, even on like a neurological level, there's a lot of evidence that suggests that smell is one of the senses that is most closely connected to our emotions.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Are we on taste? Okay, copper and lemon, one after the other. Love that.
Love the detail.
Love that.
Any detail y'all got for us? Detail's great.
Bitter, dusty almonds.
Oof.
Vaguely metallic. I just can't get over the curry. I can't get over the fact that more than one person said curry.
It's really interesting.
Thyme, but like with a Y, with a T-H-Y. An overly ripe fruit, or it even ripening in your mouth. A candy that goes from sour to sweet.
All right.
Orangina. I swear to God, more than one person said that. Am I insane? I don't know, but Orangina.
So let's take a look at this, right? I mean, I think that one of the things that you're probably noticing as you're taking a look at this list is that tons of these are like directly contradictory, right? For sight, we have a phoenix, this like super majestic image. We have fall leaves turning, this really beautiful image.
A rat.
And we have a rat, right? We have dust motes.
I like that.
Right? We have a constantly growing and decaying flower. So the emotions being created by these images are super different from image to image. I think that one of the biggest differences that we had here was for smell and taste, right? Sweet smell decaying books versus decaying rat in the wall of your house. The word decaying is even used in both of them, but this one feels homey.
Yeah, nice.
This one's about death, like very, very clearly, right? So one of the reasons that we're trying to demonstrate this to you is because concretely describing a location, a place, anything like that, is the way that you get the emotion across more clearly, right? Even something like saying, he felt the weight of time on him, is you have weight and that does some work, but you can do so much more, right? If you're describing what does that weight feel like, is it grounding? Do I feel like my feet are more firmly on the ground because of it? Or is it crushing, right? There's so many ways that you can take it. We're going to have a lot of exercises today, so we'll come back to that in a minute. But that's our practice with concrete language. We're going to keep using it today.
That was some really good stuff.
That was really, really excellent. So good. So what does this have to do with setting? Generally, a description that evokes a strong image has a better shot at grabbing the audience's emotions. So think about all the different things uncomfortable can mean, and we don't know what you're talking about if you can't describe it concretely.
Right.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Sophie?
Oh, just because different things will feel uncomfortable to different people.
Yeah.
Getting on stage might feel terribly uncomfortable to somebody, and not at all to somebody else. Might feel fantastic.
Exactly.
But also, like with physical sensations, some things feel good to some people and not good to other people.
Right. And there are just so many different kinds of uncomfortable, right? The difference between sitting in a hard chair versus sitting in a chair that's uncomfortable because it's like from your childhood home and you don't have good memories there, right? They're two totally different kinds of discomfort, and concrete descriptions how you show us the difference, and that has everything to do with setting, right? So, what's the purpose of setting description? To describe the place where your current scene is occurring. That's what setting is, right? However, one of the big things that helped me out with setting, because this is actually something that I really struggled with up until quite recently, and the way that I ended up trying to figure this out was I literally just went through some books by some of my favorite like mystery and horror and fantasy authors, and just tried to figure out when they stopped to describe setting, what the heck are they actually doing? How do they know what to look at? And I made a list, and this is part of that list. Characterization of whoever inhabits or runs that place, setting can give you. It can establish an emotion in the audience or create tension. It can foreshadow future developments. It can world build, and it can create the illusion of place, along with a bunch of other things. But these are what we're going to talk about today. And it gives you a ton of options so that if you're stuck and your characters enter a room and you're like, I don't want to describe this room, it doesn't matter. A, sometimes you can just not describe it. But B, a lot of the time there's a lot more you can do with it than just saying how many chairs are in it, right? So we're going to go through these. And for each one of these, we're going to do an exercise. So stay in the live channel. Get ready. So we're going to call on you. Let's do our exercise extravaganza.
I can't believe you can just say that.
Exercise extravaganza?
Exercise extravaganza. Okay, I got it.
Exercise extravaganza.
All right.
Descriptions.
No need to show off.
Descriptions that juggle several purposes at once, right? We've alluded in the past to the fact that really your goal all the time is to have every sentence do double duty. You're not going to hit that double or triple duty, right? You're not going to hit that every time, but it's always the goal that you have in mind, and that's what we're going to try here, right? First, we're going to start with characterization. This is for the live channel. I gave you 2 prompts. You can do one or you can do both. It's totally up to you. Just make sure that you mark when you put it in the live channel which one you're doing so that we know. I want you to replace these moments of telling the audience how a character is with a description of their bedroom, office, or car, right? So Maria has been depressed for weeks now. That's option A. Or B, Ace had a chaotic mind, but a useful one. Even if nobody else could sort through his train of thought, he always found what he needed in time. Very, very different angles.
All right, so you're going into the live channel, and you're doing one or both of these.
Yep. Make sure you label which one you... I mean, honestly, when you say Maria or Ace, we'll know, but... People are saying very nice things about me in the live channel right now. Thank you.
But don't.
But it's time to get to work. Let's go.
This isn't the say nice things about Kevin channel.
Right. This is not Kevin's best friend.
Best friends race. That's what I was thinking. Yeah. That'll be our next workshop. Kevin's next top best friends race.
We have...
I'm gonna win.
Yeah, you won years ago.
Yes.
We have from Eau Claire, Maria's car is musty with unuse, using smell to get it across, right?
LVNB Nerd says Maria's room was as messy and quiet as her head. Shreya Azim says Maria's bedsheets couldn't remember a life without the thin cover of dust over them.
Really nice.
For anthropomorphizing the bedsheets.
Mm-hmm.
Cassandra says when Maria opened her car door and newspaper floated to the ground, it was from several months ago. That
is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
That is very excellent. I'm seeing Amir Cat Official gave us Ace has a Bunsen burner full of tea right by the door. Strong chaotic energy.
Love it.
I think especially if we see Ace drink that tea later and he does not keel over, we have what we need, right?
Andy says Maria stepped over a pile of dirty laundry to get out of her room. Yeah, which is like simple but like very
get to the
quick
crux,
and effective.
right?
Yeah. Gold Rogue says her car was stained, coffee on the seats, wrappers in the cup holders, and dirt all over the floor mat. The windows were covered in fingerprints, leftovers of fries, and greasy burgers.
Can we find maybe one more about Ace?
Yes.
'Cause we have a bunch of these.
How about... Eli Summers says, the sewing machine is the center of the vortex that throbs around Ace's room. Various projects in various stages of decay litter around like rubble crunching beneath the weight of his mind. I actually would love to see more about those projects specifically.
Totally.
I think that's how you could make it more concrete, but I really like the sewing machine.
Mm-hmm. Right. You have another one, or should we move on?
Ace's car is from Rock. Ace's car is overflowing with old bags, receipts, and tissues. But as soon as anyone said they were hungry, Ace could reach into the gap between seats and produce an energy bar.
That's great.
I like that very much.
That's really excellent, right? So tying the setting to the character action too, right? So that's excellent. Another thing that your setting can do is establish emotion or tension. So again, I've got 2 prompts. Pick one or do both. Walking into their old bedroom made Ali very nervous. Or this coffee shop is the place in the world that makes me feel calmest. And I think that it's probably worth, while you're doing this, if you're going to do A, try to do it without saying the word nervous. If you're going to do B, try to do it without saying the word calm.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be so beautiful to not have lag?
It'd be cool. Might be cool.
I'm just like imagining what it would be like to teach a class without lag. Do you even remember?
It's been a dog.
All right, I see that people are typing. I'm just gonna wait one more moment.
Yeah, we'll give a couple people a chance to get in there.
Though I'm sure it's thrilling to just stare at us saying nothing. Okay, Ace says, the bed is made pristine like a hotel service. Ali has never made the bed in their life. AJ says, Ali tensed at the smell of their mother's perfume, resting on the bed sheets, overwashed from something stronger than care. I'm hearing that the audio and video are out of sync, which I don't know if there's anything we can do about it.
I'm not sure that there is, unfortunately.
Sad. I hope it catches up.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's anything we can do about that.
Sorry if it's still happening. I hope it fixes itself. I don't know that there's anything we can do. Okay, how would you say that? CDs? Sades?
Maybe, yeah.
Revolutionary says, quiet music floated around the small space. The smell of coffee beans freshly ground welcomed and encompassed the patrons. Coffee beans.
Coffee beans.
That's
you don't
so
even
nice.
like coffee, but you...
No, but I love the smell of coffee.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever met anybody who does not like the smell of coffee.
It's nice.
It's great.
That actually, I mean, I think because of that, coffee is a pretty good descriptor put in, because it's very strong, very recognizable, and people usually have emotions about it.
Right. Let's take a look at one more from either prompt, and then we'll move along.
Okay. The Leslie Gideon says, soft jazz floated through the speakers. The scent of freshly made pastries and fresh tea settled around me in the warmest embrace.
That's really nice.
I miss coffee shops.
Yes, 100%. Coffee shops and the library are the 2 places in the world.
And that really did it to me, so good job, Leslie.
Yeah, no, you got us. All right, foreshadowing future developments is another thing that you can do with your setting, and it's also what we're doing right now, because we're going to come back to this one
So mad at you.
in a minute.
That's very funny.
World building, all right? We talked about this a little bit during our world building stream a while ago. But when you're describing a place, you may also be telling us about the world that place is situated in. Same deal, 2 prompts. You can do one, you can do both. Just label it. My questions are, what does the city street look like in a world where everyone is always being observed? Or, what does a supermarket sound and smell like in a world where there is no food, only protein paste?
We watched Snowpiercer.
Movie rocked.
It did rock. I had a lot of nightmares.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, for like 2 nights after.
Oh, God.
It was really upsetting.
Really good world building.
Yeah. Yes. Anyway, protein paste. Not to diminish the excellence of that movie and the things it was trying to say by being like, it was gross, but it was gross.
That may have been how it was trying to say it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact.
No, it was fantastic. Okay.
And remember, we're looking for concrete descriptions, right? Use the 5 senses, especially the senses that you're afraid of using.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Vari says, the streets were busy but quiet, the only noise in the area coming from the sea of moving feet in the market. It was too dangerous to speak under near-identical masks and hoods. Your voice was identifiable. Everything was identifiable. Factory Edition Gremlin says, as I turned down the alley, every pigeon turned its head to greet me, the shutters in their eyes opening as they began filming. Messed up.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good.
Odd says, the protein aisle is cold and thick with the smell of something akin to beans and earth.
I really like that one because it walks the line of a couple different emotions, right?
Right, that could be nice.
Yeah, to us, I think to us, knowing what we know, it sounds gross. But you could imagine somebody, like, looking forward to going to that aisle, right? I really like that.
Ace says, I remember seeing pictures of the old markets, how they had bright colors and advertisements everywhere. Now the supermarket is filled with the white walls of a hospital, cans labeled with gray papers and Times New Roman fonts. People walk through the checkout line and are given as many cans as they ask for, and then they leave. I like that this does some contrast by giving us some concrete description of what supermarkets used to be like, and then contrasting that with what they look like now. And it kind of gives this effect of like you feel like the color got sucked out of everything. And that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. One thing that I'm seeing throughout here that just to keep in mind and to keep an eye out for is I think that I'm seeing a lot of people who are defaulting to describing things just by what they aren't. Make sure that if you're going to tell me what something isn't, you also tell me what it is.
Yes.
It's very, very tempting to just rest on the negative, but the negative doesn't actually give me anything to imagine.
Right. Yeah, and remember to come back to the senses. And remember, I mean, you already said this, but try not to rely exclusively on sight.
Yes.
Because that's, I mean, we're so visual, most of us, that it can be easy to do.
Totally. And I think that if you're thinking about writing, whatever format you're going to write in, it's all about using the benefits that format gives you, right? A movie can't give you smell. But if you are writing something, you can rest on smell really strongly in a way that a movie cannot.
Here's a nice one. Mara Can't Run says, the air conditioner in the supermarket blows about the chalky formula, and I grimace as the foul-smelling powder sticks to my face. So something interesting about that is that it mentions smell, but it's actually most evocative in terms of touch.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea what it smells like, but I definitely get this like gritty, pasty feeling.
Definitely.
And that's very strong.
Definitely. I think that a concrete word in place of foul there would like elevate this to the next level, but it's also really, really good already.
It's already really strong.
Yeah.
There's also like, I mean, this isn't necessarily the time for critique, but like there are a few things I am noticing across the board. And so with this example, like I want people to look out for words like artificial often isn't doing as much work as it could, because there's a lot of artificial smells. Right,
and artificial is itself an abstraction.
Right, and so like there are certain things that it actually could be pretty concrete, like, well, actually I don't know if it's the word, but like artificial banana. Yeah. Like you do know that pretty particularly, and it is different from an actual banana. Right. But if you just say it smelled artificial, that doesn't really give me a lot. Even though you said smell, it doesn't necessarily tell me how it smelled.
We're going a little harder on you this week, but it's because we're deep in the throes of revision right now, right? Before it's all about just pound it out, right? Get all the writing out. And when you're looking over it again, it's a matter of being a little bit more critical so you can identify this stuff.
Faintly Macabre says, the smell of lemony cleaner seemed to radiate up from the tiles as my shoes squeaked down the aisle. Almost instinctively, I steered my cart away from the citrus flavors. Okay, so lemony, we got something.
Yeah.
We know what lemon smells like. And we also got some sound here.
Mm-hmm.
And sound that tells us about the setting.
Yeah.
Because it's probably like super cleaned.
Mm-hmm.
And it tells us what the narrator is wearing. So that's actually doing a bunch of work.
I also like lemony instead of lemon, right? Mm-hmm. It's like it something's off here. Mm-hmm. It's really good. Should we move along?
Yeah.
All right. A note on the illusion of place. That's the fifth thing that I said that you could do. Let's take a look at this picture here. Sophie, what's this a picture of?
Like a living room?
A living room,
yeah.
Right? So we look at this and we see a living room. I'm going to give you a little bit more of the picture. Does it still seem like a living room to you?
Yeah, living room plus like a kitchen area, sort of an open plan.
Right.
Something.
I'm going to give you a little bit more of the picture. And now we realize that we're looking at the set of a sitcom.
The TV set, yeah.
Right. The reason that I use this example is basically the concept of the illusion of place is you cannot possibly describe everything that is actually going on around it. And even when you're seeing something on TV, if you're watching like a sitcom that takes place inside somebody's house, they never built the whole house, right? I think a really funny example of that is there's that HGTV show that they started a while ago where they were trying to like rebuild the inside of the Brady Bunch house inside like the outside shot of the Brady Bunch house, and it is impossible.
Right.
The inside of the house does not fit in that building.
Right.
So like the attic room they had to put in the basement and other nonsense. There are stairs that lead nowhere. But while you are watching the Brady Bunch or whatever, you do not, you never worry that the house does not exist. Right? While you're in it, the house exists for you.
It's a magic trick.
Exactly. That is the illusion of place. It's basically convincing the audience that something exists outside the view of the camera.
And in my opinion, that's what all art is. All fiction art is. It's just, or not even fiction necessarily, but just like convincing somebody that something exists that doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And there is nothing outside of the set. Like it's just cameras out there and the real world.
Right.
And I do think I think it's funny sometimes because like we will get asked questions about things outside of the purview of like what's in the story, and I'm like, nothing. There is no.
Right.
It's not real. Like, right. There is no answer. But also, this is maybe a little bit of foreshadowing because of something that we might do in a later workshop. But I do find that sound design works exactly the same way.
Yep.
You're trying to make it sound like stuff happened that didn't actually happen, and you're also trying to make it seem like that sound continues when you don't hear it. It doesn't. There's nothing.
Absolutely, right? We're not just going to leave you high and dry and say this is the illusion of place, now do it. Some very quick tips on it, which you can actually see in this room too. So I'm gonna flip forward to talk about the tips, and then we're going to flip back to this image. Convincing detail of specific non-essential objects in a setting allows us to believe that the entire setting exists. Significantly, you don't need to describe everything in the setting to create this illusion. Even in an image, we don't need to see the ceiling to believe it's there, right? The first two versions of that image that I showed you, I did not show the ceiling, but you thought there was a ceiling, right? Turns out there's not, it's just lights. But, you know, I don't need to show that to you in order for you to believe it.
Well, what's important is that you set up the lights so that they hit everything else in the same way that they would if there was the ceiling right there.
Right, absolutely. Or in other words, sometimes a setting description is just there to make the place feel lived in. Let's look back for just a second. If I had any criticism of this set, it is maybe that it's just a little bit over-designed. There are so many, in fact, this gives us a closer view. There are so many details of people living here in this set that some of it feels a little staged to me, right? It's like every single surface needs to have something on it that catches the eye. There's no blank space here. That works really well for a visually engaging like TV show, right? In a set that you're going to reuse over and over and over again. Is it believable? I think that some of you honestly probably caught that this was a TV set from this image, just from that. But I think that those non-essential images even if they're a little bit overdone, are still doing the work of helping us to believe that the rest of this house exists, right? So non-essential objects. Nobody cares about this hoodie. This hoodie does not matter. But having the hoodie there makes us believe that people live
Somebody
there.
lives there, yeah.
Right. So...
Oh, I was thinking of, like, speaking of a TV show that does amazing stuff with the set, I think a good example is Arrested Development.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's, like, always details in the background just in the set itself.
Right.
That give the illusion that stuff has been going on. One of my favorites is, and I don't know who has watched Arrested Development, but one of my favorites is when Tobias decides that he's going to try to be in the Blue Man group.
That's exactly what I was
and he,
thinking
like,
about.
paints himself blue, and that's, like, a plot arc in one of the episodes, and then even when that stops being a main plot arc, you'll just see sometimes, like, blue fingerprints on the walls,
Yeah.
and nobody mentions it,
Yeah.
but it, like, makes it feel like, oh, Tobias was here, he touched the wall, he's still been running around covered in blue paint this whole time. They don't need to talk about it. It's funny to us when we see it, and it makes us believe that this man was living in this house going around. That never happened.
Exactly.
It's all fake.
Exactly.
But, you know, you put it into the setting.
Right. When you're into it, you don't think about it.
Right.
We're going to go back to foreshadowing future developments now that we foreshadowed it. We're going to tie the illusion of place into this. Many of you have been asking us how to sneak clues to a mystery into your story without giving it away, and recognizing the many possible uses of description is a huge opportunity to do so. All you really need is to make sure that your clue is masquerading as something else, right? Whether that's characterization, it's establishing tensions, world building, creating the illusion of place.
Or being funny.
Or just being funny, right? So long as your clue is masquerading as something else, it will almost always go undetected. Because the audience will look at it and they'll say, okay, that's clearly the purpose of this statement, and they will move on because your story's still trucking.
Is
right?
this a good time for an example? Or should I wait?
Yeah, give an example so that they know what we're talking about.
Because I have an example from Murderous Mask. I wanted to pick something from early so that it wouldn't be spoilery. But there's the thing about the glass syringes that, like, collect the blood, and Nureyev has, like, put them on the door handles, and so there's foreshadowing earlier where Juno goes to get the door, and he says, oh, let me get the door.
Right.
And we interpret that as him being gallant, it's character development, it's like relationship development. Juno has this reaction to it, and it does develop their relationship, and, like, so in that way it's not just a fake thing. Like, it does develop the relationship between them, but also then if you look back at that later, you'll know he had an ulterior motive for doing that.
Right. It's masquerading as characterization and a joke, right?
Yes.
That's the detail. It's doing a few things at the same time, but really the reason it's in there, the reason that we took time out of that script to say that, is because it's a clue.
Right.
Right? Let's give that a shot. This one we're going to give you a little bit more time for because I'm really curious to see if people can try both of these. You can do them in whatever order you want, just label them. So here's what we're going to do. A, the murderer killed the victim with a knife usually used in fishing. The detective first meets the murderer in the sporting goods store the murderer works at. I want you to show the murder weapon in a description of the setting, but masquerade it as characterization. Right? Again, the detective does not know this is the murderer yet. This is a clue that will come up later. But can you describe the setting? Can you describe the actual murderer's relationship with the setting in a way that, like, will set up this clue for later?
So they have to describe the scene where the detective meets the murderer in a sporting goods store.
Yep.
And they have to somehow hide this knife, this fishing knife,
Right.
as characterization.
Right. Bring up the fishing knife, but make it so that it just feels like description of setting, right? Or characterization.
Yeah.
Similarly, Grandma's secretly a witch who cooks children in her oven. Describe Grandma's kitchen, but masquerade it as illusion of place, right? Try to just describe the kitchen in a way that's like, this is what Grandma's kitchen looks like, just so you all know, we're all in Grandma's kitchen. Hi, thanks, everybody. And then later on, way further in the story, we will look back at this moment and go, oh my God, that was our first sign that Grandma was cooking children in her oven, right?
And what you really want, ideally, is for it to also function well as this other thing that it's masquerading as.
Exactly.
So I see people are typing, and I know this one might take a little bit.
Yep, this one's a little tougher.
Would you like to do a little song and dance or something while we're waiting?
I figure one of us can do a song, the other one can do the dance.
Yeah, okay. Which one are you going to do?
I'm going to...
Kevin just combusts into flame.
I'm going to bow out. That's what I'm going to do. You could read both roles in that script. Maybe you could do the song in the dance.
I love that we're just not letting that go. I mean, fair. Whatever. I killed it. You can't be mad at me. I did a great job.
Can't be mad at me. Nobody's ever mad at me in life.
No one has ever been mad at me. And if they were, they were wrong.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you want to talk about setting description as characterization, our bookshelves that people always flip out over, good characterization of the state of our mind.
Are they? I think they've always been like that.
Oh, no, I mean in general. I don't mean in this current moment.
I guess.
They look like they were organized once a long time ago. Because
Right.
they were.
Yeah, one time ever.
Yep.
Okay. How about... Shriya Zazim says, he gingerly picks up the knife I pointed out. It's not my favorite. It always does a messy job. I'm not below using it in a pinch, though. Do you want to look at any more? That's good.
That's good.
That's good for you.
That is good.
I really like it. Eau Claire says, her kitchen was cozy and homey with oversized cabinets chock full with flour and goods. It was maximalist to the extreme with a big stove and oven combination, on top of which a pot of sauce was simmering away. I'm losing my mind.
That's terrifying.
That's so good.
Right. That's good. And I mean, the other thing that's doing is it's not only masquerading as illusion of place, it's also masquerading as establishing an emotion. And it's the opposite emotion from what we're going to feel later. That is a great setup for a future payoff also.
I'm losing my mind.
That's fantastic.
That's so good. Oh my god, the giant oven!
Mm-hmm.
No! Oh god, that's so good. Cassandra says, Grandma Ada's kitchen smelled divine. There were spices all along the walls, and the oven was huge and well used to accommodate the huge meat roasts she would bring to family dinner.
Cassandra, why?
You all got me messed up.
Mm-hmm.
AM says, you're looking at an Epsilon Pro. A man with a toothy smile and a polo shirt embroidered with store was making his way over to me. No idea what that means, I reply, placing it back on the rack of short knives. Best knife in the market. That thing will slice a carp in half faster than you can blink. You seem to know your fishing knives. The worker's eye twitched. It's a hobby. It's good.
I really, really like it.
Oh my gosh, these are very good.
Can we take a look at a description for the first one that doesn't have much dialogue in it? So we're getting a lot of dialogue, and I want to see an example of how you can get this across with just description of the place.
Okay, the Leslie Gideon says, Stephen walked into Kyle's pro hunting supplies shop, hoping to get a feel for this small town. To his surprise, it was bustling, and he had to wait in line to speak to the owner, who was cheerfully explaining the benefits of different boning knives to a nervous novice.
That's really good. That's really good. I like that. The ones that use dialogue also really good, for the record. I just want to make sure that we see how, even without dialogue, you can still get a lot of this across just from describing the place, right? Should we move on? Do you want to do one more?
This is just cute. The other Sophie says, Grandma was old-fashioned and a bit odd. She had one of those big iron ovens with herbs hung over it. She always had cookies in the jar. My friends always joked she was a witch. I like that.
That's very good. So that's our exercise for today. We have an announcement with our here's a second, home so you can do this work. We want you to continue revising your story. A final draft of your story is going to be due on Saturday, June 27th, which is going to be the last day of our Writing Fiction Across the Void Streams. Unfortunately, we are nearing our end.
Yeah.
And that's my birthday. So, I legit like.
We're just gonna have a birthday party for Kevin on the last day.
Legitimately, I wanted to make sure that we kept this going at least until my birthday because this has been like one of the most fulfilling things for me in the last couple of months. So thank you all so much. So keep on working on those. We have some surprises planned for that day. Nothing concrete yet, but we'll tell you as we develop them a little bit more.
But the last one will be fun.
The last one will be very fun.
Yeah. So do come.
And for next time, upload to the submit channel one of the following: either a concrete language / abstractions chart for an abstract concept you choose, or a setting description you're proud of that accomplishes multiple goals at once.
And extra points if it is a revision.
Yes.
Of a setting that you already wrote.
Yes, that would be excellent.
You don't necessarily have to show the original draft, but...
So, that is your home work.
Wait, but do it in the point.
Any questions?
Yay.
So, we're going to take your questions now. Somebody in the Discord saying that we have the same birthday.
Aww.
Here's another fun piece of trivia for you. Our birthday is the day in Shirley Jackson's short story, The Lottery, where every year someone gets stoned to death. That is my favorite.
We could do that.
We could do that.
We could do that.
That's my favorite fun fact about my birthday.
Oh, also, I do want to say ahead of time for the topic request channel.
Yes.
So one thing that I would like to do before we finish the workshop for good is I know there have been a lot of questions over time about not strictly creative writing aspects of, let's say, podcast production. I know people have questions about stuff like that. So I thought that we could devote a day to talking about that kind of stuff, whether it's sound design related or directing or casting or logistical. So if that is something that you're interested in, I will take that kind of topic request in that channel and take that into account when we put together that workshop. And, you know, you can also still put stuff in there about writing related stuff still, because we still have a couple weeks left to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're really looking forward to seeing your final drafts.
Totally.
And
it'll be a big old share-a-thon that day.
A big old share-a-thon
with some surprises. So we're excited to hammer those out. Got some questions.
Okay. How about Unionize the Rat says Sugar Daddy and Salt Daddy.
Who's who?
I've got to be Salt.
I guess so, yeah.
Must be.
Yeah.
How do you make sure... Yeah, because you're the nice one.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
How do you make sure your story has rewatch value? I do actually think that foreshadowing has something to do with it. Like, you like to have that feeling of satisfaction that you can go back and be like, oh, I see why that was there. Or at least that's something I like to do when I rewatch something or reread something. Make it funny.
Something that I think about a lot when I'm watching things, and less when I'm writing them, in terms of rewatch value, is, like you're saying, foreshadowing, right? It can be two completely different experiences to take something in for the first time and to take it in again, depending on what is set up and what is revealed, right? I don't think we think about this explicitly when we're planning, but I do think it leaks in just from what we like in things that we read and watch, that, the reveal is not just something was there that is surprising. It is additionally something is there that is surprising, and it changes what came before it, so that when you read what came before it, it feels new, even though you already went through it, right?
There's a question: how do you make sure you find the right people to create with? And I'm actually going to ask you to put that in topic requests for me, because I think that is something we can get to, but it's not necessarily writing related, so maybe not right now. Ace asks, if you feel like all your writing is trash, do you still advocate for writing just to get words on a page, or is there a better way to get out words that you actually like?
That's a hard question. Ace, because I would really, really like to give you a hard and fast rule on that, but I don't think there is one. I think that the thing that you probably need to keep on, watching yourself and getting better at is reading your own feelings as you're writing each day. One thing, even a couple of years ago, I would have told you write every day no matter what. I don't think that was super good for me when I was in that space, because some days you just can't, right? I will say that you do need to establish a habit of continuing to write even on days where you don't want to, and writing through initial words that feel really bad, right? I like my typical goal is about 1,000 words a day. It has been much lower since we've started the quarantine. But when I was doing 1,000 words a day, I would find that the good words didn't happen until somewhere between word 300 and word 700, which means that a lot of what I wrote was junk, and that's just kind of how it is, right? So you got to leave yourself room to get through that junk in order to get to the good stuff.
If someone, no idea who, has procrastinated actually writing their story instead of just thinking about it, would they be able to speedrun creating it in time for the last day? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, do it.
I think I've said before that scripts take radically different times for me. The entire two-parter of Midnight Fox, rough draft to final draft, I think I did in a long weekend. So yeah, you absolutely can. For some people, deadlines are how you do it. So here's your deadline.
Yeah, do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
You won't do it.
Sebs asks, how do you go about accurately and ethically researching and writing particularly sensitive topics, especially if it's a topic you may lack personal experience with?
It's a good question. I think that for me, there are a couple answers there. The first answer is that I have several readers who read what I write before I really finalize it, right? They do not cover as many bases as they probably should. So a lot of the checking with people who may be affected by that concept happens before the writing ever happens. So when I do that, what I try to do is do some research on what the actual lived experience is. In my experience, it is when you're telling a story about people, it is less important that you are 100% correct about the idea itself, and more important that you represent what it's actually like to be that kind of person. So you need to trust when other people tell you, this is what it's like to be me, that they're the expert on them, not you. And so, you take that and you use it, right? I think a pretty direct example of that is, so on our show, Talfrin in Second Citadel, we revealed was asexual, right? That was not just like a quick, let's just throw him a bone and move on. I had a lot of conversations with a friend of mine who's asexual about like, what kind of representation do you think matters, right? If this is going to come out, what do you want to be there, and what can we avoid making it look like is a failing of this character?
Well, right. What do you want to not be there?
Exactly. It's asking a lot of questions ahead of time, and to be honest, it's also being ready to mess it up, or to do it in a way that not everybody is happy with.
Yeah, because we've said this before. That will never happen. That everybody is happy with it. Like, we've never. Well, not never, but like whenever we've made a choice like that, somebody has always been mad.
Yeah.
Always.
Always.
So it is what it is. Eli Summers says, how do you write cishet characters that aren't canned or stereotypically? More generally, how do you write from a perspective that you don't or can't fully understand? As a queer person, I know every character can't be queer, but also it's hard to not write straight dudes as stereotypical frat boys / fuckboys, because I know that's not all cishet dudes. I swear I worded this better last time. Oh, I see. Listen, straight people are just like normal people.
They're just like the rest of us. If you prick them, do they not bleed?
I mean, but honestly, I think that is a ridiculous thing to say, that they're just like everybody else, but it is actually true. Yeah. And I mean, in a certain way, we don't actually do that on our show in the same way that, like, obviously almost all of our characters are queer,
right,
but we often are not really writing about the queer experience,
right,
especially in Juno, because their queer experience is just zero like ours.
Yeah. And I think this ties into the last question too, right? For any perspective that you want to write about,
Talk to a straight person.
after you've done the research of talking to a straight person, good luck finding one. After you
Not in this group.
after you've done the research of talking to a straight person, you've always just got to go humanity first. I think
Yes.
even if you were setting up a straw man, if you were setting up a character who you don't want the audience to like, who's a fool, you got to go humanity first in terms of like, how does this character justify themselves to themselves, right? How does this character see themselves as the good guy in their story? What do they want? And how is it that them expressing these things maybe leads them to some of the behavior that you want to show? That is both relevant for a character that you don't want the audience to agree with, and if you want to write a sympathetic straight character for some god-awful reason. We got a few of those. Yeah, it's humanity first. Think about them as a person. Think about what they want. Think about their basic needs and how they try to meet them.
Yeah.
And then you layer on the difficulties of being that kind of person, or the privileges of being that kind of person on top of it, and just ask yourself very openly, what do these things do to somebody, right?
Right. But yeah, like, there's definitely like a distance, because you don't, like, they're not going to be aware of their privileges necessarily.
Yes.
Or if they are, that'll make them a very specific kind of person.
Yes.
And especially, I'm assuming that when you talk about writing straight characters, you mean in the real world, because if you're writing a straight character in like a fantasy world in the same way that we are,
right,
it shouldn't really matter that much,
right,
because it's not going to impact their life in the same way it does
right,
people in the real world.
Right.
Like, I don't think that, you know, if we take Mick Mercury, who's like the only straight man on Mars, like, his life experience is not different from Juno's because he's straight.
Right.
It's not at all.
Right.
So it has nothing to do with it.
I think one moment in our show that is maybe useful to look at as an example of that is the head of the Janus Beast, like the entire dynamic between Mark and Caroline, because each of them is coming from a specific like place of privilege and specific like social disadvantages that the other one does not understand, and so the way that they deal with that, Mark grows a little bit, but he's also a dick. Like he's the worst about it. Caroline grows a bit, but ultimately,
she's also a dick.
Yeah, getting further in the world is more important to her, right? Than exercising this. So that is how you go human first, even if it can be ugly to do so, I would say.
Goldrogue asks, what are ways that you've projected on your characters that you didn't realize until you published? We knew. We know.
We often know.
We know, and we often do it on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I didn't notice how much I focus on people's eyes in real life too, until people started pointing out that every freaking character on our show gets a description of their eyes.
That's very funny. That's not really projecting as much as it is like revealing yourself accidentally.
Right.
Daddy and Eyeliner Daddy, how do you make different characters have unique personalities and manners of speaking? I think we've talked about manners of speaking before. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it really is as simple as starting with an imitation of a real person or a character that you like and you think is engaging and fun, and then it will just become something a little different because you're writing it. Yeah,
and I think whether you're watching or reading or you're even just out in the real world, like listening, listen for like the music of people talking, right? If there is somebody who talks in a way that grabs your attention and you don't know why, very often to be completely honest, I'll eavesdrop and just like to figure out some of the patterns of what they say. Usually I don't pay attention to the content, but I'm just trying to pay attention to the rhythm, I guess.
Cactus B asks, I'm writing horror right now. Do you have advice for finding the balance between heavy/dark details being too vague and too graphic? That's tough because that's personal taste, right?
Depends on your style, for sure.
And like stuff that's going to be way too upsetting for some people is going to be correct for other people.
Yeah. There are two ways you can go about it in terms of the drafting process. I would say you can go too far with the description, or you can do not nearly enough of the description in your first draft so that when you show it to other people, they can tell you, like, this is a moment I thought was unnecessary, this is a moment where I could not see what was happening, and so on, right? Be ready to mess up, and be ready for other people to call you out on it, and I think that's really the way you find what you want to do, right?
Leia Glass asks, how do you write a sympathetic villain? This, once again, I think is humanity first.
Yep.
And, like, where are they coming from?
Yeah.
You know, why are they doing... Like, everyone has a reason for doing the stuff that they're doing. Even real-life villains
Right.
have a reason, and they have a place that they come from.
Right.
And if you show that to us...
Right. And I think that you need to be able to look at that reason by itself and say, that's a good reason, right? It can be that when you zoom out from that reason a little bit and you see what surrounds it, you go, this person's ignoring all of this other stuff, or this person is weighing this way more heavily than this other stuff they should be weighing more. But the reason itself, I think, should, in order to create a sympathetic villain, should be one that the audience can hear and go like,
oh, I get it.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because a lot of times the reasons that people are villainous are because they're not taking full context into account.
Right.
But, like, if you just looked within the frame that they were looking in, they would be right.
Yeah. No, I mean, one thing that we sometimes struggle with is, like, we're trying to, you know, where we remember, like, someone said something on our show that feels relevant to something that we're trying to get across, and we discover that it's Ramsey's. And, like, it's because Ramsey says a lot of things that are right, and his motive is right. I mean, his problems with the world are, for the most part, correct. It's because he completely ignores people's personal autonomy and the fact that that is really important that he is so villainous, right? So we can relate to part of him, but when you take in the whole of him, it's kind of monstrous.
And I think you've got to be able to, like, get in the skin of your villain.
Yeah.
And this is something I always feel... I feel is the case for both writing and acting. You've got to think they are right on some level.
Yes.
Even if you ultimately condemn them, you know? And, like, I just remember in college, like, talking to somebody about how they were going to act a character, and they were like, oh, well, I think he's just, like, such a bad guy and such a jackass, and I was like, you can't act...
Right.
You can't act like a bad guy. Like, you have to act from a place of thinking what they're doing is right.
Right.
Even if you as an individual don't think what they're doing is right. And I think writing is the same.
Just because it's relevant, very briefly, Gold Rogue asked what our favorite villain to write was. For me, it's Ramses with a bullet. There's not even a contest.
Yeah.
And it's because he was so painful to write. There were so many times when I was writing down things that I genuinely believe that were coming out of his mouth. And it makes it so that he's still very enticing as an idea, right?
I like Pilot.
I know.
Pilot is my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like style. Ramses is not very stylish.
No, he's not. Ramses is the only time I've ever written a villain that when he exited the show, I got extremely emotional.
Vari asks, if you accidentally wrote far too many toys into your first draft, how do you pick and choose what toys to put back?
It's a good question. You got to find what's essential. What does your story have to do versus what is a nice to have, right? The rephrasing of the murder your darlings thing that I often use, I think with like my creative writing classes, is you want to keep all the A plus stuff and you want to cut all the A stuff, because the fact is that all those other details, however cool they are just going to take up space and distract from the A plus stuff, right?
All right, I think we're just about out of time, so I'll just take a couple more. Elena asks, after you've reached a point where writing has just been making you unhappy, how do you find a way to start again and find any joy in it again?
Been dealing with that, Elena. I'm going to be 100% honest with you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I think that there's an extent to which you need to do or reorganize your mind to remember that ultimately at its core, you do this because you enjoy it, right? If you are laying stressors on yourself, like by layers and layers and layers that are making it so that you don't enjoy it anymore, very often, for example, for me, I actually do not do super well with deadlines. When I have a hard deadline, it's all I can think about when I'm writing, and it like really slows me down. But if I'm in a case where I just need to have a deadline, there's no way around it, right? Usually I will try to focus in on the thing that I am writing and just ask myself, like, what do I feel like doing today, right? What did I enjoy here? How can I make that more enjoyable for me, right? Sometimes just a day where you have a good time with it, just to remind yourself that that's possible, can really help pull you out of that funk. I wish I could say that I can activate that day whenever I want. I can't. But I think that it's a goal to shoot for, right?
Gold Rogue, I see your most recent question. How do you grow your audience and interact with your audience? I'm going to ask you also to put that in the topic request channel, because that seems like the kind of thing that maybe we could get to in a later workshop. So if you could put that in there for me, that'd be great. And this is pretty specific, but we touched on it a little bit. Is it okay if we talk about it?
Sure,
a bit?
yeah.
Amir Cat Official asks, how doth one write asexual/aromantic characters? I'm neither, but I feel like representation is important. I mean, we already talked about how talking to people who are actually ace or aro is an important aspect, but also this in particular, I think, can be a tricky one.
Yep.
And was one that it took us a while to get to, because it's kind of tough to reveal that
Yep.
without like landing on it too hard. Because if you, like, let's say you want to reveal that a character is gay, you actually have a ton of ways to do that without ever saying it.
Yep.
Not that there's anything wrong with saying it, but sometimes that isn't what you want to do, or sometimes you want to do that later, or in our case, maybe that language doesn't even exist in your universe.
Right.
But you don't have to, because all you have to do is demonstrate that that character is attracted to someone of the same gender, and you did it.
It's harder to demonstrate a character not doing something than it is to demonstrate them doing it.
Right, because, like, you could certainly demonstrate someone not having attraction to people or not dating people or whatever, but that wouldn't prove that they were ace or aro. Like, maybe just no one came up.
Right.
You don't know. So, like, we definitely got really bogged down in that for a long time. And I think that for us, what we ended up doing was just coming out and saying it. We've done it two different ways.
Yeah.
One time, it was not really a coming out. It was just like a thing that was mentioned in context. And that's when it happened with Jet. And, you know, he said, oh no, I'm not into Rita, and also I've never been into anyone. And, like, that worked for his specific character, I think, because he's so blunt and straightforward. Whereas with other characters, that might have felt actually kind of shoehorned in.
Yeah.
And this is also, I think, a tricky thing, because sometimes calling things shoehorned will come from a place of homophobia or, you know, acephobia or whatever. But I also think, even when you're talking about queer issues, things can still be shoehorned.
Yep.
It still happens, and you still don't want to do that. Like, you want it to still feel like it naturally flows with the story.
Yeah.
In the case of Tal, it was relevant to that particular narrative, right? Because the whole thing was about all these hot ladies.
Yeah, we built the story around that a little bit, in fact.
Well, what we built the story around was that we knew all of the main characters were going to be men.
Right.
So, but yes, so then it had to do with the actual narrative. It didn't come out of nowhere that he ended up coming out. It was that there had been all these hot ladies around this whole time that everyone was saying were so hot, and he was like, oh, I don't feel that way.
Right. And I think that something that's worth saying is I would not prescribe our method for everybody.
Right, that's just what we did.
Right, because remember that for every piece of, like, representation that we push out in the show that means a lot to people, there are also a lot of people that are really dissatisfied by it.
Yeah, right? People have been angry at us for both of those, specifically.
Well, so, and again, and I don't want to say those people are wrong. I'm just saying that we have a way of doing it, and I think that ultimately the only way that people are going to feel really represented in their stories is if a lot of people do it a lot of different ways, right? I will tell you, I always have a bias towards characters who their identity is not their big thing, right? Their identity is not like the defining thing about them, mostly because that is what I really relate to, right? Like I'm a bi dude, and I don't talk about it that much, not because it's not important to me, but because if you asked me to talk about who I am, the first 10 things I would say would be things I do as opposed to things that I am, right? That is not a mindset that works for everybody, and that doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means that if I'm going to approach characters' humanity, that is probably the route that I'm going to take, right?
Yeah, all right. So I think we're going to leave it there for today. But again, feel free to put things into topic request. As I said, we'll do one workshop that covers stuff that aren't specifically creative writing based, that might have to do with other aspects of, obviously, podcasting, because that's what we do. So if you have questions about that, you can put them into topic requests, and we probably won't get to all of them, but we might get to some of them. And you've got your stuff for next week, and we left links in the description.
Please check out those links.
Yeah, please do. And be well, and if you're gonna get out there and protest, be safe.
We have on the show's official Twitter account, we have a tweet with a bunch of information about how to protect yourself.
So that's the one that you can take a look at and or retweet if you think that's useful. And we'll see you for the next one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have a good week, everybody.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.